People keep asking if I'm back, and I haven't really had an answer. But now, yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
Welcome back, guys, once again to Nerd Rage Reacts. I am Ryan Anderson, and joining me in this reaction is the Skype Man, Hype Man.
Brad Learman.
What's up, buddy?
What's going on, man?
Just another week of awesome movies. So, I've probably seen like 3 or 4 in the last week, and I mean, I'm not slowing down anytime soon. Probably going to see Aladdin tomorrow. What have you been seeing lately?
Oh, gosh. Quite a few movies, including the one we are about to review right now.
Yes. And in this episode, we'll be reacting to
John Wick, Parabellum.
Yeah, the third outing for John Wick. Now, we've actually never done one of the John Wicks before, so that's why we're kind of excited to do this because, I think we'll talk about it later in the spoilery parts of it all, but I think they're going to continue this, but if this is the end of the trilogy, I'm more than happy with it. I like what they did with this movie, and
They actually just announced that they are doing a fourth one, it's coming out.
Yeah,
it's 2021.
You're totally right. I forgot about that as I was saying that. Yeah, because they sent me a text message saying like you have been served. I forget the phrasing from it's from the movie, but yeah, I have essentially been served, and I've been recruited essentially for 2021 when the next movie comes out. So yeah, there will be another one. I take that back. Anywho, so we're here to talk about the good, the bad, and if you should be excited for this film. So right off the bat, how many times have you seen John Wick?
I actually saw it once.
Just the once, okay. And I figured as much. This isn't one of those like event films like we did for Avengers. And again, thank you to all you guys who listened. We got really big numbers on our return episode talking about Avengers Endgame, and we have you guys to thank for that. So I just want to say a quick thank you for all that. And also wanted to mention that we're going to do what we're calling retro reacts, where we go back and talk about movies like Aquaman and Glass and Captain Marvel and all these movies that happened while we were on our little break there. If any of you guys have a really good movie that you want to hear someone discuss in great depth or detail, hit us up with an email at nerdragepod at gmail.com, and we'll be glad to talk to you about any of those movies and maybe even do a whole episode about them. So that being said, do you want to just kick it off right here, Brad?
Let's do it.
All right. So like we always like to do, we're going to do a non-spoiler to start and then a little spoiler thing at the end there. So for non-spoilers, right off the top, what did we love about this movie? What did you love, Brad?
Oh, as always, from the past 2 movies, the action is just top-notch.
Phenomenal. I can't get over it.
The choreography is pretty awesome.
Yeah. Did you? Oh, well, I don't want to spoil it. Yeah, shoot. I was going to say, do you have any standout parts? But yeah. Yeah, but really the action is just balls to the wall. Like, it's next level in ways I haven't even seen. The inventiveness with what they've affectionately referred to as gun fu is just something I just can't get over. Like, we ended up seeing it in one of those Dolby theaters where like the sound is super magnified and you just feel and hear everything. And I couldn't have picked a better movie, I think, to watch this sort of an experience because everything is like a gunshot that sounds like it's right in your ear and everything felt like it was actually happening in front of you. So if you guys do get a chance, go and see it in Dolby because that's what I loved about it was just the atmospheric action of it all, the intensity of everything that was going on. Was there any other standout things that you loved about this movie?
I think the locales in this movie were pretty good as well.
Yeah, because in the first 2, if I recall correctly, they only kept it like really in like the New Yorky boroughs or districts or whatever you want to call it, because I've never been to New York, so forgive me for not knowing all of New York. But yeah, it's very New York centric, and here they go overseas, and I mean, I don't think that's too much of a spoiler because we've all seen the trailers, and the fact that Halle Berry, who I actually have to say might have been one of my favorite parts of the film, because she just kicks so much ass too. And again, I don't want to spoil how much, but like her and the dogs that you probably see in the trailer, they just have some great scenes that it's nice to see a woman also kind of kicking ass in these films too, alongside John. Is there any other that you did like, or is it time to get in what we didn't like?
I kind of like the twist at the end that forces John into a very, I guess, not so much physical confrontation. It's more of an internal conflict where he has to make a difficult choice.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, be careful. Don't want to go too much further than that. Yeah, they do leave it in a direction that makes you go, okay, there's definitely room for more here, and what does he do now, kind of thing. Which I think most people, unless he was to die in this movie, were kind of expecting that he would continue on his adventure in some capacity. So, what they chose, I will say, was not what I expected. It actually seemed like it was going in one direction. They went a different one. And I would have been fine with either one, frankly. But yeah, what they did was, I liked it too. You're still classifying that as a like, or more like I'm a little unsure? Like I'm kind of on the fence about it.
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
It just, we can talk about it.
Yeah, keep it for spoiler. Okay. So what didn't we like about this film, Brad?
There are a couple of the long take action pieces.
Yeah.
That I think they might have been able to be edited just slightly tighter.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
It looked like the action, like towards the tail end, was getting. I don't know if the actors were getting tired, or that they were sort of just telegraphing what they were going to do.
Yeah,
that's really my only complaint. Really,
it's kind of tricky because we talk in very positive ways about how intense and how over the top the action is. I do feel like for what they present to you on the screen with each of the three movies we've seen so far, there's so much action that, like, literally the first real, like, fight scene, which is super early in the movie, after that, I was kind of in the back of my mind thinking, how are they going to top this? And to a certain extent, they did with almost each scene that followed it. But that first scene is so good that it made me feel like everything else from here on out was going to be kind of underwhelming, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of with you on that, where the movie is good and it continues on, in my opinion, at a brisk pace. But even like some of the fight scenes, there's one that, again, I don't want to get too far into, but there's knives involved and things like that. And things are being thrown at people all left and right. And I felt like some people probably could have died or should have died. And then they keep kind of staying alive and keep throwing them at each other. Like, it almost goes back to what I said about Civil War, the Marvel Civil, or Captain America Civil War, where I've referred to like pinball characters, where I was like, how many shots does it take to bring this guy down? The final scene of the movie has some of that too, but they kind of justify it with characters having armor and things like that. So I kind of understood that, but I was like, you know, if you took like one bullet to my shoulder, I'm probably going down without any argument. I'm like, nope, you got me. I'm good. I'm not going to fight you any further on this. And these other guys are just back up and back up and back up until like they've got, you know, 4 knives and a bullet shot through the head. And then, you know, then they're finally gone for good. But man, those characters just keep coming at you so hard. And I was just like, man, stay down. Like, it was almost so brutal that I was just like, just lay down. Let's move on to the next scene. Like, I don't need this amount of excess. But, you know, these are those kind of movies where you just shut your brain off and you just kind of like enjoy the action for what it is. And on a strictly action based basis, I can't think of anything that wows me in the way that these movies do. And my only other, like, not off the piggybacking thing of what you said, my own personal thing that bothers me about all these is something that you kind of expect. And it's such a minor gripe, but it's that there isn't much for dialogue in these films. Like, I know it's not ever going to be its strong point, but the story is just like, you know, kind of how you get from point A to point B and a little bit of exposition as to why it matters that they're going from there to there. And then all the violence and visceralness that happens in between all that, which, again, it can't be said enough how over the top and amazing it is. But, you know, I kind of want to have more in these movies. Like the first time when you see John's dog die in the other movies, and then you just kind of have that emotional response to what's happening to him. In this movie, without spoiling it, I just feel like he gets beat up so much, and it's more about the characters of the world around him that he's interacting with. I guess
maybe I can see that.
Yeah. Well, nevertheless, I think that's only really my gripes with it is just, you know, it's not a movie for people who want to have couples night, which in all fairness, I brought Amanda to it and we wanted to go and see Aladdin originally. And we're going to see it. We're probably going to see it tomorrow night, but I felt bad for her because I knew she was in like, oh, we're going to see this happy, enjoyable experience and it's going to be magical. And here's bang, 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 bang. And I'm like, okay, bad call on my part, but man, it's still a really enjoyable movie. And I do recommend it for you guys, just as long as you're not going out for date night. Yeah. And, do we think it'll be good is usually how we wrap this up. And now that we've actually seen it, do you recommend it to anyone who wants to go and see or is interested in this kind of movie, Brad?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're kind of like, if you kind of grew up in the 80s where there were just a lot of action flicks just to like showcase a lot of action,
yeah,
you'll definitely enjoy this movie. There is a couple of interesting story elements in this movie. They kind of decide to shy away from really putting a lot of attention on it, and they put a lot of the focus on John Wick, which isn't bad. It's just there isn't much left to tell about John Wick.
Yeah, I mean, unless something else in his life dies, you know, there's not much. I mean, I don't know. There is still some exploration, but it's always in that weird way of like, well, I remember when you used to do this, you know, kind of like when, going back to the Avengers again, like whenever Black Widow and Hawkeye talk about Budapest, like it's those casual references to this thing from his past, but we never really get to fully explore it. Like it's almost like he's lived this life, but now he's in the deep shit. So everything that's brought up about the more interesting aspects of his life are just kind of like quick references to like, oh, you remember that one time? And now we're just kind of dealing with what he's, I don't want to say like his final moments, but just what he has to deal with, his fight to survive in the now, if that makes sense. So yeah. And as for myself, I think it is what I said before, you know, it's not a date night movie. You know, it's not something you're cuddling up with your loved one to go and see. I mean, maybe you will, you know, it depends on if that's your kind of movie, but it's definitely, like a spiritual successor to some of those movies like a Matrix or a Bulletproof Monk or Equilibrium, those kind of movies where it is shoot 'em up style. I was trying to think of the one that I really love, and I mentioned it on our show before, that never gets enough love. The one with Ryan Reynolds and Chris Pine, and it's almost like a heist. Smoking Aces, there it is. Smoking Aces, it's kind of like that too, in the sense just balls to the wall, bullets flying everywhere, and it's just a really good time at the movies. I would recommend it. I really would. And I definitely recommend seeing the first two before you see this. But it isn't really necessary either. I mean, would you say that it's necessary to see the first two, or? Tricky, right?
I would somewhat recommend it. Just to kind of get the overall story arc, because there is a little bit more story in the first and second movies,
right?
So,
because
I would recommend seeing the first two.
Yeah, because I had to explain it to Amanda, and I was trying to recap for her because she hasn't seen the first two, and I was like, okay, so really, what you need to know: dog died, wife died. He's like this government kick-ass agent that has to basically kill for hire kind of character, and he's the best at what he does. And every time he thinks he's going into retirement, he gets called back in, and he has to go and, kind of fight for his life. And that's really what it is. So I think that was enough to kind of flesh her into the world. But at the same time, I just feel like it's more interesting to actually see these movies for yourself. So yeah, I would say go and see it. You agree? Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's get into some spoiler talk here. Okay. So first, we usually like to do reveals and revelations. What was the biggest reveal and revelation in this movie to you?
Biggest revelation. So one of the things I thought was really cool is they started to send out this, what was it, a Justicar or a adjudicator, sorry.
Okay,
it was an adjudicator from the high table.
Yeah.
And then we figure out that the guy from the last movie that John Wick blasted in the head at the end, and got kicked out of the Continental.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
was part of this, or at least he was a newly minted person of the high table.
Right.
So they send an adjudicator there to figure out what the hell happened.
Yep.
And at the same time, John Wick got excommunicado. Basically, he's excommunicated from the entire operation. And this adjudicator was somewhat interesting, but at the same time, didn't really get a whole lot of screen time. Like, she honestly, any person could have played that character and just walked around.
Exactly.
That existed.
I was actually going to bring her up as like one of my problems.
She was an interesting character, but she was a little disappointing.
She was very one-dimensional in my opinion, where it was just like, I have a mission. I have orders from the high table or the council or whatever, and I have to see it through, and I'm going to shut you down. And if you stand in my way, I'm going to shut you down, or I'm going to kill you. And like what she did, it was brutal, and it was cool because like she took no prisoners, but at the same time, like she was very one note, and I didn't care much for her. I cared more for what she did, if that makes any sense. So, yeah, I felt like she was more of a problem in this movie, but not necessarily a weak link. Just, I don't know. Like you said, pretty much anyone could have been in that role. Any other female actress with a scowl on their face, like you could have pulled in. As she was talking, I was thinking of like a cross between her. The two females from Deadpool, the one who played the villain, and then the one who played Negasonic Teenage Warhead. Yeah, like she was kind of like a cross between like that thuggish type, but at the same time like that shaved head, like I won't take your shit type. And I don't know, I just got that weird vibe from her, and I would have been happy with pretty much anyone in that role.
Much cooler.
What's that?
Is if what would have been much cooler, instead of having this adjudicator, just kind of just stand around and kind of like, what did you do? Oh, what you did was wrong, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
What they should have done is had Mark Dacascos' character be more involved. Oh
yeah, he was awesome. I was actually surprised.
Yeah, he was pretty funny. He's a good action actor too.
You know, like I'm in this weird place with him. I loved him in the 90s, and then he did, I want to say like one season or half a season for one of those arcs they were doing on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I was like, oh, he is a bad actor. But I think when he's given the right kind of material, he's really fun and engaging. And in this movie, he really shone. And like, he he was this weird like admirer of John that I wasn't like, when you see him in the trailer, you just think, oh, okay, you've got Mark coming in to basically be the ninja assassin type that's gonna really take it to John. And they had that, but he had so much dialogue and so much interesting things to say, like how he admired him and all these little quirks about him and how he delivered this performance that I was just wanting to see him in another movie. I didn't want to see him die. Like the way he goes out at the end where he was like, it was almost like Monty Python when they cut off the limbs and it's like, oh, just a scratch. Like I literally wanted to see him pull out the sword and find some way to come back, and then he kind of keels over and dies. But man, I really liked him so much that I wanted him to keep, kicking ass or maybe be on John's side by the end of it and like have the two of them fight side by side. Cause aside from Halle Berry, he might've been my favorite part of the movie. How did you like Halle, by the way?
Halle was pretty good. I'm somewhat disappointed she wasn't in the movie more.
Yeah, like she was just for that area, yeah.
Yeah. It would have been cool. Well, I mean, the whole plot with her that her daughter is safe, and then if she kind of disobeys, she kind of goes halfway and then just stops and leaves him in the desert. Like, I think she could have gone all the way to the end with John.
Yeah, I understand what they were doing, because they were basically saying, okay, getting into the shit with you the way I have just to get you this far is enough that I could have lost my own life or lost, basically my standing within the council or whatever, wherever her position is. She was already feeling like she was going to be fucked. There was a part of me feeling that like she was just going to go like, you know what? I've gone this far. I practically killed everyone in, I can't think of the guy's name from Game of Thrones who was the leader of that group or whatever, that they ended up gunning down all of his people. And then they left him kind of for dead, took him out at the kneecaps and just let him bleed out. But yeah, like that whole scene was so good that I wanted to just see them keep going. So much so that after we got out, I did like a little mashup on Twitter where if you guys go, you can see it. I took the shot of them with the dogs in the desert. I put it up next to Resident Evil 5. And I was like, honestly, as good as this movie was, this is the kind of material that we could put into something like a Resident Evil, or if you added a little bit more character development, maybe something even like a Uncharted movie, and make a really good video game adaptation. Like this movie proves that you can do cool, zany, off the wall kind of stuff, and it won't be, looked at as just, oh, it's another video game film. And I think they could actually pull it off. But yeah, like I love their dynamics, and so much so that I just want to see them do Resident Evil 5 in live action with those two actors, because I think they're fantastic. Yeah, if she had continued on, I think that would have probably changed the whole story and direction of that film, though. Like, do you think that it's better to have John Wick flying solo or to have her with him alongside him? Does that make them more interesting?
So at this point, John didn't really fly solo through much of the movie.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
Aside from finding the head of the high table out in the middle of actually, he found him in the middle of the desert. Mm-hmm. Going to the sort of ballerina school front.
Yeah.
Where he just kind of goes to somebody that kind of brought him in and kind of made him who he was today.
Yeah, Angelica Houston, who was great. I love Angelica Houston. I'm so glad she was in this movie.
That's what that was?
Yeah, you know who she is, right?
Yeah.
From Addams Family and a million other movies like Witches. Mm-hmm. And, yeah. Anyways, keep going. There's your revelation right now. Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting. Since the very first movie, John Wick has been less and less of a lone wolf.
Yeah.
because he's slowly kind of having to rely on people out of necessity.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think this would have been cool if Halle Berry would have stayed in, because this is a character that he clearly has history with.
True.
And if we would have gotten a little bit more of that, past history, and then going forward, having to help him now,
right,
along with, because right now he's now going to be working alongside Lawrence Fishburne's character.
Yes.
At the start of John Wick 4.
Yeah, what was his title? Like King of the Burrows, or?
Yeah, he was. Oh God, what is?
Basically, he was like a king of the underground, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I love that idea, and I thought he died. Like when she chops him up with those blades, this is kind of going back to what I said.
Disgasco's character does that.
Yeah, he does. Or yeah, did I say she? I meant he. But yeah, when he gets sliced up, I thought it was one of those things like when you see the first Resident Evil movie and then the laser blades chop the guy into a million pieces. I thought it was kind of like that, where he had been sliced up so badly he just fell, and the implication was that he had been split apart. But yeah, I guess it was like just little cuts that went all up and down his body to leave him scarred for the rest of his life.
I guess. I mean, there was a good amount of blood.
It's
when
true.
He fell.
Yeah.
And I thought he was dead too, but going back to the head mistress, when she got both of her hands stabbed by the katana.
Man.
I was kind of like, did they really kill him? But since we didn't see him for the rest of the movie, I'm like, oh dang, they must have killed him instead. Huh.
Yeah, that piercing through her hands is like very like Christ-like in the imagery too. I felt my hands for like, whenever you feel that tense moment and you have to like, kind of bend your fingers a couple times just to remind yourself that your hands are still normal. Like I had that moment there and I was just kind of cringing through all of that. Man, like there's so many really little but effective touches of like horror elements. Even going back before she gets the sword through the hands, there's that little girl who had been doing her ballerina stuff or whatever, and they work those girls so hard that it's just this passing shot that just added a layer into like the dynamics of what goes on in this like ballet school, how they push them so hard, and she peels off her big toenail. Yeah. And I'm sorry if that made any of you guys squeamish out there, but man, I just went, ooh, like it just got me right then and there. But that's a great use of showing without expressly telling what's going on in their little world.
It's good environmental storytelling.
Exactly. I love so many different little parts of this, and it's kind of nice for a lot of these movies that we've been seeing, or well, at least I've been seeing as of late, where it's just dialogue, to come into something like this and have it just be like shoot 'em up, bang, 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 a lot of show, but not necessarily tell, like I was saying before. I really just got a kick out of this. And in terms of my revelation, the fact that he did survive, talking about the Lawrence Fishburne character, the King of the Underground.
He's the Bowery King.
The Bowery King, thank you. I wanted to say Burroughs, and that, I confused the two. But yeah, the fact that now John is in that place with him, I want to see kind of two things happen. One, piggybacking off of what you said before again, having them say for number 4, we brought back Halle Berry, like he's using his influence to kind of recruit people for a cause, and using John as kind of that link to her, calls her in. Maybe he says something to her to the extent of like, John's in trouble, we need your help, or something even more impassioned, to get her over to their side, and then have just kind of like this John Wick team, if you will, going into the Continental and just guns blazing and just taking them all out. I don't know. I think that's a cool thing that they could pull off. And then on top of that, you could go ahead and do like a Matrix style reunion, because it seems like that's what they're trying to accomplish. With all these interviews they've been saying, you get Carrie Ann Moss in there and just have her with Lawrence, And John,
she's kind of past her acting days. Not gonna lie.
I mean, yeah, obviously she's not going to be doing sidekicks up a wall.
Figure of the head table, or the high table. Sorry.
The which one?
Make her a figure of the high table.
Or yeah, I mean, I just want to see her have guns and just kind of like if they even get halfway close to that scene in like I think it's the lobby or the bank vault or whatever it is from the first Matrix movie. They don't have to have them flipping up the side of walls or anything like that. But like if it's just the two of them back to back, just firing alongside each other and just doing a couple cool scenes, even if she dies in that moment, like it's just that cool team up that I think fans of those movies want to see them back together, especially when they saw Lawrence in the last movie, because he wasn't in the first one, right? Yeah, he comes in the second one, and I think it actually would have been cooler if she had been in this one, like almost if she had been the Halle Berry character, and then because then you could have the dogs do most of the physicality, which I gotta say the dogs were kind of the star of this movie too in a lot of ways, because man, those dogs were awesome. But yeah, I think that reveal that Lawrence Fishburne's King of the Bowery character is still alive, and that's where they're kind of taking this into the next movie. I think that's the biggest and most interesting reveal and revelation, and the fact that the character known as the TikTok King saved him the way that he did, because I honestly thought John wasn't going to survive, and then like halfway as he's falling, I'm like, oh, this is John Wick. Of course he's going to stay alive, and of course he did, so that they can keep a sequel. But yeah, was there any other reveals or revelations about this movie that stood out to you?
So when John Wick makes the decision to cut his ring finger off.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
To take the job of killing the manager of the Continental in New York.
Right.
He has this moment inside where he can, and the manager says, "Do you want to like remember your wife in memory?
Yeah, like do you want to be a good man?
Or do you want to be able to take your own actions and be a free man?"
Yeah, exactly.
And that's how the whole Continental fight breaks out. Yeah.
Do you think that was a good idea, or it was a little messy? Because I'm leaning a little bit on the messy side.
I think slightly messy.
Yeah.
I think they wrote the story out and then tried to get an action piece in there.
Yeah.
So they had to get John to make a decision that would force the fight.
Right. I mean, obviously you've got to kind of force John's hand into a lot of these scenarios. It's not like he's going like, the reason that, like in the last movie, he's like, I'm back, is because he's forced out of retirement. He's always forced into these situations. None of it is like really a voluntary thing. He has to kind of begrudgingly accept.
Yeah, I would have rather had the sort of initiating incident come from the adjudicator.
Yeah.
Rather than the manager himself.
Yeah, because they kept kind of like putting him in a weird scenario, and I think, and I can't think of the actor's name, the one who plays the manager, he's a great villain, and also a great kind of like in between, like will he, won't he kind of character. I don't know. I just didn't like the way they kind of put the ball in his court, and he puts John in this like noble path, and then towards the end of the movie, after all the fighting's gone through, they present another option in front of him, and then he goes, you know what, fuck it, I'm evil, I gotta do what I can to keep my own job. And I guess it does kind of make sense for him, because that's always really his motivation, is to keep the Continental and keep himself alive, and he'll say whatever is necessary to do that. But the way that they pitted that in the first conversation with him and John, where he makes John make the decision, it almost makes it feel like he's being the voice of reason rather than the guy who's invested in his own personal interests. So yeah. I don't know. It felt off for his character, whether you put that position on him the first time or you give him the change the second time. I wish it was tonally the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think, yeah, it's he comes off as slimy at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
And had there been some sort of foreshadowing a little bit,
Yeah.
either in this movie or in the second one,
Yeah.
I would have been okay with it, because through the first and second movies, you don't really have any inclination to not trust this character, because he's always helping John.
Yeah, he's his he's like the cue to his Bond, you know? Like he's there for him at all the time.
And then the fact that he knows John really well.
Right.
And they have a good rapport through the first two movies. And then all of a sudden to kind of turn into a slimy character and throw John to the wolves, just to keep his own job, it feels slightly out of character.
Yeah,
I get they're all a part of this, assassins kind of organizational
guild, if you will. Yeah,
thing.
Yeah.
There wasn't really any lead up to that, and so it just kind of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering if this is important for the fourth film. I mean, obviously we know that it's going to be a fight against the Continental, so I feel like this is the turn, essentially, to make that. But I just felt like the justification should have been a little bit more pronounced in a way that the audience can go, oh, okay. Like he's such a relatable character, to have him have that turn here felt a little off, but I guess I can understand it in terms of, if they had just had him go in fuller detail about his motivation and about like self-preservation and that sort of thing, I think that turn would have felt a little bit more earned, and like you can understand why there's that justification for him to go bad. But I guess they expressed it enough that it still works, and I'm excited to see what happens in the fourth film. But yeah, good points on that. I hadn't really gone over it that much in my head, but yeah, I totally agree with that. Easter eggs. Any Easter eggs that stuck out to you in the film?
I'm trying to think of some good Easter eggs.
Obviously this isn't going to be like a Marvel film where, it's connected to the comics. Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of maybe a couple references to different movies.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. I'm really trying to think.
Well, I'll give you one. It's the only one I really picked up on. And it's somewhere in the movie. I think it was like when Winston was asking John what kind of weapons he needs, and John just goes, guns, lots of guns, which is one of the things he says in The Matrix.
Ooh.
It's just a little thing, and I don't know if anyone even picked up on that, but I thought I'd throw that one in there. That was the one that stood out to me. So, any ones that you can think of off the top of your head?
Not really.
That's okay. Since you don't, I'll just throw in a little thing. What did you think about the TikTok man?
Just kind of a typical side character.
Do you want to see more from him? Like, I love Jason Mantzoukas. He's usually that over the top character, but he plays this kind of subtle, slimy, almost greaseball type that has something going on that you don't really know too much about. And then he also helps John at the very end too. Do you want to see like more exploration from that character, or just him being that guy in the shadows that kind of like helps in a moment's notice?
I wouldn't mind seeing him again. I just don't overuse him.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, you know what? I say that, but at the same time, like, I like him so much that you could pretty much put him in anything and I'd be happy with it. Yeah, but I agree with you. Like, yeah, you don't want to overuse anyone. Do you feel like Hallie's character would have overstayed her welcome if she had been on the screen for the whole movie?
Honestly, no.
You just like Hallie that much, right?
Character.
Yeah. And that makes sense too. Yeah. So I would say I want to see more of him, but yeah, I agree with you that maybe not too much. Maybe half or 3/4 of the film, but maybe not the whole movie for me. Mm-hmm. Okay. Not a whole lot with the Easter eggs, like we said. Character discussions. What character really stood out to you in this movie in a big way?
In a big way.
Or in an interesting way. Yeah.
Halle Berry's was a good one. I think DeCasco's character was pretty cool. I wanted to see him involved with more of the movie than what he was.
Yeah.
He's just this fanboy trying to when he fights against John Wick, he's just like, dude, did you really do that to all those people with that pencil? It's hilarious.
Right. Yeah. I was just really surprised too, because that's not what you get from a traditional villain. Because again, they really kind of made him seem like in the trailers to be like a one-dimensional villain, and ironically enough, it turned out to be Asia Dillon's character or whatever, the adjudicator, doing that I was just like, oh, okay, I didn't see that coming. So he was very, I don't want to say Joker-ish, but he had this other level to his character that was more than just this one-note villain that you're like, I don't know, I sympathize with him. I wanted to see more of him, and honestly, I just want to go back and watch more movies from the 90s that Mark was in just because I like that performance so much. What did you think about some of the other supporting characters? I know we talked about Angelica Houston, Ian McShane, who played Winston, or Lance Reddick, who was Charon, the guy who's I don't know what you call him, the night manager or the front desk attendant. I thought he was kind of cool. He's been in all three of them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought the dude cast as the leader of the high table out in the middle of the desert was kind of over the top, sultan looking.
Almost in a racist kind of way? Or a stereotype kind of way?
It was a very brief flash of Aladdin for me. And I kind of looked at wait a minute, do they really still dress like that?
And see, that's the thing. It's so interesting how they set that up, because it's go to the edge of the desert where no man can possibly go, and then you look up into the stars, and if you die, you then may have a chance at seeing the elder. It was the elder, I think was what they called him. And the thing I did enjoy about it was I got to see Saeed Tamagud. I think that's his last name. Who I haven't seen in a lot of movies as of late, but he was in Wonder Woman. He played Samir in there. I really enjoyed him, and I wanted to see him come back. But the way that they made his character, I don't know, very Sultan-like, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It felt kind of like I said, kind of one-dimensional and almost stereotyped. But I loved what they presented in front of him, because I actually thought it was going to weaken John rather than make him, kind of back in action. Where, you mentioned before, they have him take off his ring, and by doing so, you had to cut his finger off. I actually thought that would have slowed down his mobility and his ass-kicking abilities, but it really didn't seem like it did much to slow him down. I wanted to ask you, though, in regards to that, there was that fight scene in the glass room towards the end with the cronies right before they get to Mark's character, and he does a lot of this karate chop style action to these guys, and there was a half part of me that was laughing because it was almost like that Austin Powers style where it was judo chop. And I kept thinking that every time he did it, I'm like, why is he judo chopping these guys to death? I didn't get it. And I was wondering if that was more of a conscious effort to show that maybe he had lost some of his mobility with his hand, or some of his ability to punch as effectively as he could before. Did you pick up on any of that, or what was your thought about him with the loss of the ring and his finger?
Well, I think the guy wanted to collect the ring.
Obviously, yeah, totally.
That's what he wanted.
Yeah.
But you had to symbolically cut your finger off.
Yeah. It seemed like it was a sign of loyalty, and I got that part. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as the weird karate in the glass room, I didn't necessarily catch on to that.
Okay.
As I guess you just showed.
Yeah. We were a little closer up instead of like being like usually we're like right back up into the middle. So this time we're like third row from the front and we're just staring up at it. So I don't know. I think I just noticed a couple more open hand hits. So I don't know if they were necessarily like, judo chop, but I don't know. It just stuck out to me. I was like, I wonder why he did that there. Like if there was like a, in Star Trek when you see, they do like the Vulcan neck pinch or like it was like hitting a pressure point or there was a specific reason why he was hitting him in that way. I just wondered if it was like to showcase that maybe he wasn't physically as strong in that hand as he was before. So yeah, I didn't know, but I was curious. On that note, do you think that the loss of his finger as a whole was necessary? Like, couldn't they have just symbolically like cut the finger off, taken the ring off, and then like sewn his hand up and then like he would wear that as like a badge of honor, or like a sign that would tell everyone like, hey, if you fuck with us, you will lose your finger, or you will suffer the consequences if you cross us. Like I don't think he needed to lose his finger. I mean, do you think that losing the finger was necessary?
I think again, like it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
I still think it was the symbolism in it.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Like forfeiting the memory of his wife to live.
Oh, okay, yeah. That makes sense. I could see that. Okay. Any other characters that stood out to you in a big way? I mean, I think we pretty much covered all the big players for the most part.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so as we like to do, final details of the film. Any final thoughts on John Wick 3? How it got to this third point in the film franchise? What to expect from the fourth one? What's your take, Brad?
Great action flick. A little light on story, but all in all, it's still really, really entertaining to watch.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, honestly. It's balls to the wall action, like we said in the non-spoilers. It's a lot of fun. Go and see it in like the big kind of the best kind of sound, or even if you get like one of those D-box theaters where the chairs kind of rumble and shake, because it helps just feel all the action that's going on, and there's so much of it. Actually, that brings me up to one of the things we were kind of talking about in the non-spoilers that I wanted to bring up to you. Do you feel like some of those characters took way too many hits to go down? Like, there's that scene where they're in I think it was like the second big action scene where they're trying to chase John down, and they make it into like that glass room with all the old weaponry, and they're just throwing knives and axes and everything under the sun. And I'm like, how many knives does one guy have to take to the chest before he goes down? Like, the one guy gets 5 like little throwing knives into his upper torso, and I'm just thinking, I would have been dead by knife 2, honestly. I would have just laid flat and been like, no, I'm good. Clearly I've lost this fight. Do you feel like some of those characters were like a little over the top in the way that they took a punch, so to speak?
I mean, no, not really.
Okay.
Not really.
Because there was this point, like, and Amanda was already kind of like waning on the movie already at this point, because she was like, she could tell that what this movie was going to be, basically, I think. And she was just like kind of already distancing herself from it, like, oh my gosh, this is so much blood and violence and all this stuff, which normally she likes. But I just kept seeing him throw knives and knives and knives. And I felt like there was a little bit of a dwindling effect, because I was almost thinking to myself, like, how could they top this anymore? And then, of course, you get scenes like where the horse kicks the guy in the head twice, and then he drags the rope around him, and then the horse just drags him through and practically kills him. I think it practically snapped his neck, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just blown away at the inventiveness of this franchise. Like, it's one of those things that I go back to when I talk positively about Final Destination, one of my personal favorite movies. not because it's like a great movie from beginning to end, but because of like its inventiveness of something that feels like almost a tired trope. Like for a while there, we had that, oh man, I want to say it was Jude Law it was Clive Owen, where there was a running gun kind of movie. I think it was called Shoot 'Em Up or something like that. That he was in. There was movies like that all throughout like the mid 2000s where it was all this, constant gun action, or you have like your Sin City style movies. And a lot of them had like a sameness to them. Sin City had a different aesthetic, but for the most part, there was just like, I've got a gun. I'm never going to die. I'm never going to get hurt. And it's one of those problems with John Wick too, because I feel like aside from him losing the finger, he doesn't really take like big hits other than in the very beginning when he gets sewed up by that doctor. I didn't feel like he got like sliced in the leg or anything like that would really impair or enable him. I don't know. I just, that kind of stuff bothers me, but back on point, I was getting kind of tired of those tropes, and these John Wick movies, they continue to evolve and invent the functionality of fighting, if that makes sense. Like even in the beginning where he's fighting that big brute and then he's using the book to just pummel the ever-loving shit out of this guy. And I was just like, if this is how the rest of this movie is going to be, strap me in. I am good to go. Because my God, like it just, I don't know who thinks of these kind of things. My mom used to say the same thing to me too, because I jokingly, when I was younger, I would write up little treatments and scripts for, like, at the time, what would have been the 4th or 5th Final Destination movie. And she was like, why do you think of all these crazy ways for people to die? I'm like, because people are very interested in this sort of thing. And I felt that way watching this movie. I was like, okay, they did something insane there. How could they possibly top that? And then here's John Wick riding on a horse, dragging a guy through the streets of New York. And I'm just like, you know what? Anything can go at this point, and it's all going to be insane, and it's going to be awesome. So, I mean, that's really my assessment of the film is like, if you want insane, over-the-top action with a little bit of emotional stakes in a really awesome lead character, you've got John Wick. I mean, that's really kind of like my final thoughts on the film. Any other bits you want to say in closing with John?
That's really it.
Okay. And that's it for me too. So thank you guys for listening to this. Did you like John Wick? Did you not like John Wick? Are you interested in seeing it? Let us know your thoughts by hitting us up on any of our social media accounts. We are on Twitter at The Nerd Rage Pod, on Facebook, The Nerd Rage Podcast. We even opened up one for our Super Kick Society. So you can find us on those little ones as well. If you want to ask me my personal thoughts, you can always go on Twitter at Ryan's_ramblings, where I do ramble quite a bit. And as always, you can find us on libsyn.com for all of our episodes. You can find us on the Nerd Rage Podcast, our official website. Support us on the Patreon if you want to see more great content like this, or you want to see some of our live content that we're trying to put together. Our TeePublic store is still rocking. I think there's like a $5 or $6 discount on shirts right now this week. So if you guys go and hit our website, you guys can get some really cool merchandise, customize your way with our logo, and it's just fantastic. And pretty much any other place where podcasts can be found. Any other plugs from Brad?
Nothing at the moment. No.
Okay, cool. Well, nevertheless, we've got more Nerd Rage Reacts to come. Thank you for listening to this one regarding John Wick. And for myself and for
Brad Learman,
we will see you guys again another time.